Hello everybody, these are dual drive extruders. And the main reason why I kind of wanted to go over some of the clones for the dual drive extruders is because you might have a printer that is very cheap, like the ANET, and putting something that's worth over half the cost of the printer is not a very good idea. Uh, on those printers, I have a couple of clones, and those work very, very well. One of them I print ABS pretty much entirely on it, and I get very good prints off of it even though they're very cheap printers. I did put a lot more money into that printer, like as in I gave it a different frame. So I'm really relying on ANET electronics at this point, which is kind of scary, but the printer actually does the job and does it pretty well. I do have another ANET that just has a hot end change and some of the safety features added to it, like the what's it called, the MOSFET to the heater bed, and fix the heater bed wires so they weren't melting. Now, neither one of those I would recommend throwing a Bondtech on it. I actually have a Creality feeder unit a Creality style feeder unit that I got from this company right here, which they had a claim your free item if you give them a review, and I gave them not a glowing review. This does work, but it's not the best clone out there. Now, I should probably start off with the cost difference between these guys. This is a $90 part on Amazon. This is a $23 part on Amazon. And this is a $22 part. Now, you would think this is more expensive, so this should be better than this one, but that's not the case. Now, I will say that Red Rex does have some other good parts. It seems like all of their feeder units have some sort of mounting option, which is kind of cool. They do have some fairly good documentation with it. They do include the Chinese version of their translation. I'll just show you here. So everything here has English and Chinese. And it is a little Chinglish, but since they did include the Chinese writing, which I'm assuming is what they translated into English, you actually have another option or another chance to try and translate it from what they have here to English again, and might be able to get a better phrasing out of what they're trying to say. Now, some of the things that I didn't really like about this were the screws were not the countersinks here were not deep enough, so the screws can actually get into the stepper motor through the mounting bracket on my rail core, because this is what I tested it on. I was able to get some prints off of it, but I didn't really like how it mounted. Everything was kind of clunky, like the little arm here clips in and out, and it just didn't really seem to work that well. But knowing that I did have another feeder unit from them and it did work, it is worth a shot to actually look at them for other feeder units. I would just recommend not buying this one in particular. Now, I'll throw that guy back in its case. This might go on to one of the ANETs, give it something a little bit different. This guy right here is actually the better of the two that I received. Now, comparing it to the original, all of the parts kind of seem to work really well. The sizing of everything seems to be almost identical. The holes, I did have to drill them out a little bit to get it to fit, which it might be like a common theme. Maybe there's some measurement problems, but I had to drill it out and make it fit better. However, when I did that, I drilled them out a little bit deeper, and this does fit a lot better on my assembly on the rail core than the Bondtech. So just kind of a side note, you can actually make this fit a little bit better. Now, uh, so one of the things I should probably also mention for all three of these, all of the dimensions of the main drive gear, the kind of rollers that are on the inside here. So the reason why it's called a dual drive extruder is because both parts of the feeder assembly actually push on the filament. In a normal kind of style of feeder unit, one side would be just like a pulley or some sort of like rolling element that wasn't driven, and the other one was driven by the stepper motor. So in this case, it kind of grips both sides and feeds the filament through. This is a kind of a geared. It does have a gear ratio, I guess. So it goes from a small to a big. So it takes many more turns of this to get a full revolution out of it. So one of the things that you'd probably run into with a clone is one of these things could be a different size, and you'd have to chase what your step per millimeter, your extrusion calibration would be different depending on which one it would be. But in this case, all three of these all have the same size components. This big gear up here is the same, this rolling assembly is the same, and the little kind of pinion type gear is also the same. So if you were looking to just replace, like if you had a Bondtech and it split in half, this guy would actually probably bolt in place and you'd probably get the same results. It would be highly unlikely that you'd have one of these split, but just as an example. Now, one of the things that I don't really like about it is the little Bowden tube adapter in the bottom here is not very good. This one doesn't come with any sort of clip to keep the little button here from going up and down, but you can fix that with a zip tie. I think this one you can fix with a zip tie, but having the clip does help a lot. You can get this little coupler thing. I have seen them before, but I don't know what these are actually called. But that would be a difference between these two that I don't really like as much. The top part is pretty much the same. The gripping strength seems to be about the same. This one does have a little bit bigger hole through the middle, so I'm going to kind of pop this apart here and drop everything on the table. The little holes down in here that go through, that the filament goes through, are a little bit bigger on this feeder unit than on the Bondtech. So if you do have filament that does vary a lot more, this does handle it a lot better. Because on this Bondtech, I did have some filament that didn't want to feed through it because the dimensions were a little bit off. And really, they weren't off by that much, but something to kind of consider there. Alright, so that's kind of the overview of these guys. I would say that this guy right here is probably your best bet if you were going to get a clone. It does represent the original the best. In some cases, if you are interested in picking one of these up, there are some things to kind of consider. On the rail core, since it sits right on top of the hot end, like kind of like this, it's got a little bit of Bowden tube, and then the hot end's right here where my fist is. This is kind of a pain to get everything out of the way, so you can do like a cold pull. Like if you think you have a clog, basically take some nylon. This is some weed whacker twine. So basically, you'd heat it up and then you just yank it out. You heat it up to like 240 degrees. You push it through, cool it off, and then you heat it back up again and you pull on it until it pops out. That's a cold pull, even though it's kind of hot. Doing that is very difficult with this style of hot end. You actually have to get the hot end out of the way so you can actually do it, and that can provide a kind of a annoying part to doing any work on the hot end if you have to do any maintenance. Now, that's not really a problem with the clone or the original. It's just how it was actually designed. Like it's a more of a design problem than a how it was made type of problem. That would be just one consideration I would suggest if you are thinking about getting a dual drive extruder. That was one kind of annoyance that I had. On my A-nets, I was able to just pull it through the whole feeder unit and not have any problems. But in this case, I have to pull it off, do what I need to do, and then put it back together. And that's something that I don't really want to do very often. And I'm kind of hoping I don't have to do it very often with the rail core. And really, I haven't had to do it much in general, I don't think. I think it was this was the main reason why I had to do so many cold pulls, the Area 1 marble. But beyond that, that's kind of what I think of these extruders. Uh, would I recommend somebody jumping and buying a Bondtech? It all depends. This is a good clone. If you have a cheap printer, this would be a good alternative. If you have a more expensive, if you have like an Ultimaker or a Taz or something like that, where I don't think any of those do flexible very well. I don't think the Taz does flexible. Don't quote me on that, but if you have a printer that doesn't do very well with flexibles, or you don't have good grip, or if you want to just tinker, I guess take a peek at the clones. If you have any questions or comments, just put them in the description. I will put a link to each of these on the description from Amazon. I don't have an affiliate program. I really don't care to have one, but just so if you want to look at these, uh, just take a peek. Otherwise, have a nice day. Bye.